What's going on? So, yeah, so we lost a lot of money because of that. So, all right, we ready? Good. All right. All right, welcome to the March Aero Club Safety Meeting, and my name is Roger Mann, and I'm the safety officer, and Bob Pierce, the club manager, and let's see, we got, I don't see John Law, our chief pilot. I notice I see some old faces in here.
A lot of old faces in here.
Yeah, people that haven't been around for a while, and one of them sitting right back there, but anyhow. And then we got some guests sitting in over here too. So we got, why don't you go ahead and stand up and...
Yep. Major Torres is the squadron commander for the 452nd Services Group, and he's here visiting this evening. And Major Tournay is with the 452nd also.
Yeah. Welcome. We'll try not to put you to sleep, okay? Yeah. Okay. What we do here normally, for those of you that don't know, we do a kind of an agenda here, and what we do is just kind of go down the agenda, and the first thing we usually do is introduce new people that have not been either a member of the club or were members of the club and returning or whatever. So I see some old faces, but we got yeah. You just joined, so I don't remember your name. Go ahead and stand up and introduce yourself.
I'm Robert Walters, and I'm new to the Aero Club. I just joined, and I'm soon to be taking flying lessons. So.
Okay. Welcome to the club. Okay, who else we got?
We got a new name in here.
What?
We have a new name.
A new name?
Mr. and Mrs.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, she didn't change your name, boss. Yeah.
Does this mean you're going to come in and want the dues changed?
You look for that discount.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, you gotta, if you have a relative or near relative or like, a wife, a kid, and so forth, if both of you join the club, the second person is only $15 a month. So, Aviva's been, she's already given me a good year's worth of money, so now I guess I can give her a break. So. Okay, and then I promise I won't embarrass you back. But Mitchell Jones, he was, he'd been deployed and all kinds of stuff going on, and so he's now coming back, or at least hopefully he's coming back. Okay, oh, by the way, the coffee pot that we had, actually we got a newer one now, but the coffee pot we had in the club was from Mitchell Jones, and he donated it to the club last year, I think it was, or a couple of years ago. Now we got a newer one because somebody wasn't getting enough coffee out of the old one, so this one's bigger. So, okay, anybody has gotten anything like a new pilot's license, solo? This includes Air Force. This doesn't mean just the Aero Club. Anybody want to share?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do one. So, 2 weeks ago I went down to Jacumba to do a winch clinic. It turns out that you need an endorsement to do winch launches on sailplanes. And it was a busy weekend, three full days. If you want to be a good pilot, I would urge you to get at least some flights in a sailplane. You will learn to use a rudder for one thing. But it was a marvelous experience, and it is about as close to a carrier catapult launch as you can get in the civilian world. You're going up about 3,000 feet a minute.
Wow.
Yeah, I gotta do that.
Yeah. That's, how many, has anybody here ever done any kind of,
Say that again?
has anybody here done a sailplane ever?
It
Okay?
wasn't a winch.
That's what I figured, huh? No, not a 182.
No. Oh, when the engine quit?
Yeah, when the engine quit.
No,
So that doesn't count.
It was a tow launch, not a winch launch. that I did.
Oh, it was? Okay. Okay. How many here do the thing where you jump off the top of a mountain? What's that, what do you call it?
He's dead.
Yeah. I'll tell you, those things scare me. I have a friend of mine that does that kind of stuff. I think he's nuts. Okay. All right. Any experiences? Any harrowing experiences? George, you always have one. I know that you usually have some. Anything that's happened that you can share with the club? Has anybody been violated by the FAA? Has anybody, no,
I
gosh,
stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
you did? Okay. Gee, boy, we got a live crowd tonight. Okay, all right. Later on, we're going to talk to the Aero Club manager, and then I'm going to quickly run through the Know Your SOPs. And are you doing acrobats? I'll get to that in a second. Okay. Each meeting I do a real quick paragraph in the SOPs. The one that we have right now, we're supposedly supposed to be having a new one. However, we've been waiting now a year for that, for signatures. So we'll just keep going through paragraph by paragraph. As everybody knows, everybody's supposed to read the SOPs, that when you make that little signature on that agreement, that says that you're going to be reading through the SOPs, so you know what's going on. On this one here, we're talking about flight cancellations, and basically most everybody knows what's going on with that. It says here 24 hours prior to the scheduled reserve time. Well, Flight Schedule Pro is kind of set up in a way that it doesn't let you do anything with the airplane within that 24 hours. So it kind of goes right along with this right here. We have fudged on that a few times because, we understand the situation. I mean, obviously, if you're, you wake up that morning and you got an 8 o'clock flight and it's thunderstorms all over the place, we're not expecting you to be flying that day. The only thing we do ask is that you call us to let us know if there's something that comes up that keeps you from flying. But the actual rule is 24 hours prior. And but Bob and I know that can't always be met. Any questions on that one? Okay, the other one's parking and storing a private aircraft. For those of you that don't know, if you own your own airplane, you can park it on the Aero Club ramp. It's a $40 fee for parking there, and
For a week?
that's every day. No, that's for a month. And for the month. And the one thing right now is that we do get is that you get tax-free. You don't have to pay the taxes that the county will ask for you when you park your airplane someplace else. It is a courtesy, because I did look it up and found that they could tax our airplanes. They can do that. Even though we're a federal agency, they still look at it as general aviation aircraft with assigned to the FAA. So they could do that, but they have not done so, at least for the last 20-something odd years. I know if I had my own airplane, I wouldn't mind parking it there for the security reasons, especially if you got some good equipment in the airplane. We usually try, make sure that the planes are parked in a permanent place where you can park there all the time. The only drawback with this thing is that we do not have a hangar for the airplanes, and that can be a drawback. But, you know, a lot depends on just, you know, most places, most people can't afford to park their airplanes any place, you know, except outside. Unless, you know, you can afford a hangar of some kind. Not much to be said about that. I think we got 2 people in here that own airplanes on the ramp.
Security is great too, you don't have to worry about anybody flying in the middle of the night stealing your stuff.
Yeah.
You have a plane here.
And what's nice about your own airplanes, you can keep stuff in your airplane and not worry about it being stolen either. I would not leave it sitting out there at Redlands or Riverside Airport. So, okay, any questions on this? If not, okay, all right. We'll see if this works. I don't know, I may have to do something else. There we go. Okay, what we're going to talk about tonight is unintentional aerobats, and are you doing them? Okay, let me play the video. This thing going. Uh-oh, okay, it's not going to work. Yeah, I have to. There we go. All right, come on. Gee. All right, play. Okay, looks like I'm going to have to go the other route. It's not going to play. Yeah, but see, the thing is when I put it on the disc. All right. Okay, now let me play the second one.
Getting sick.
Yeah.
Fred.
Well, Fred used to do this, didn't he?
That reminds me of my last approach.
That's a normal straight and level flight. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Which one of those do you think was acrobat?
All of them.
Yep, you're right. Both of them were. And let me get to the bigger picture right there. Okay. All right. Acrobat flights are defined in CFR 91303. For the purpose of this section, aerobatic flight means an intentional maneuver involving an abrupt change in an aircraft's attitude, an abnormal attitude, or abnormal acceleration, not necessary for normal flight. There's nothing in there about how many degrees, bank angle, or anything. So, what does that mean to you? You're out there practicing stalls. Is stalls a normal flight? Do you, you know?
Stall every time you land.
On the ground, yeah. Well, just above the ground, yeah. What is normal flight? Well, I got up here, only the FAA can tell. And the reason why is because guess what? They're the ones that make that interpretation, not you. We've had a discussion already before we even started here with Fred and Doc Kerber, and some of us were talking about it just a little bit. It's just like the 9113, which is careless and reckless operation of an airplane. The judgment does come from the FAA. So, what does that mean to you as a pilot? Well, we've had a couple of people in the Aero Club. We used to have an instructor in the club that got hit with a couple of these. And the funny thing about it was that the individual was a lawyer for pilots. And he used to go to court all the time with this kind of stuff. And he himself, though, lost all of his ratings, all because some guy in the FAA, you know, said that he was being careless and reckless and doing acrobats when he wasn't supposed to be doing it. Now, this is not necessarily our airplanes. He was doing it in his own airplane, but this happens every once in a while. Now, this individual also used to do a lot of representation for pilots who used to get violated all the time. There's in that same section, you also have where you cannot do acrobatics, and this is the part that might get you in trouble. You're not supposed to be in any congested area or a city, town, or a settlement, or an open-air assembly of persons with lateral boundaries of the surface area of Class B, C, and D, and E airspace designated for an airport, within 4 nautical miles of center line of any federal airway, below 1,500 feet above the surface, and when visibility is less than 3 statute miles. The articles that I've read and some of the things I've seen on it, one of the things that the FAA gets people is open air assembly of persons. I had 2-3 people in the office today trying to find a definition for open air assembly of persons. There is nothing that tells you what that means. Nothing. So, if you're out there flying and you're flying over a picnic and the wrong person sees it, they can misconstrue that as being you're flying too close to them, or if you're out there doing practice stalls, practice, what normally you would be doing when you go up and fly on a local training flight, they could think that you're doing acrobats. So now, just like Fred said, a lot of that stuff you can beat, and that's what I'm going to go over here in a few seconds. What can you do as a pilot in command? Okay, are you doing anything that attracts attention? When I used to go up with Fred and he checked me out for the annual, one of his things he did was, of course, have the engine quit on you, and he wanted to see what you did. Well, if you got somebody who's standing down on the ground out there, depending on where you do it, they might think that, what's this guy doing, that they're doing something is that a normal flight? Is that normal for the flight? Well, not really. I mean, because you're practicing an abnormal or emergency procedure. So technically, that's not a normal flight. But But is it something you're gonna attract attentions to? Well, you know, where are you flying? You know, if you're flying over a town, don't be stupid, you know, use your head, you know. If you're up in the mountains someplace, you know, you can probably get away with something and do stuff, you know. Scott?
Yeah, about a week ago, I was at the Renaissance Fair, the Santa Fe Dam Recreation Area, and there were people, that's right here on E. And there were people practicing stalls.
Yeah.
So
Santa Fe Dam is a work area for a while.
yeah. So I'm wondering if someone be able to call the FAA and get.
Yeah.
Would they get in trouble?
Yeah.
I thought that was the practice area.
That is the practice area, mine's practice area, Santa Fe Dam.
Yeah, I know. My daughter works there, and I know I've been there when I've seen airplanes over our head, and you know, if you're today's world, you know, we all know we've got this thing here that has a camera on it, and calling the FAA and doing things like that.
I was in line to buy a drink and people were, oh my God, is that guy?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, don't worry.
Don't worry. Yeah, exactly. We're just talking here to just remember what's going on. Today, this, you know, 20 years ago, well, not even 20 years, 10 years ago, you could go up and do stuff like that and not worry too much about somebody doing something like that. But now, there's an awful lot of people that like to see a lot of our airports around here close. And they're looking for any excuse they can find to try to turn in something against airplanes that are flying.
And as a lower limit on that, just legally, the FAA has sustained violations of 91.119, the open air assembly of persons for acrobatic flight or low level flight, over a boys camp, over 10 houses and a school, over the campus of a university, and a beach area along a highway, without
yeah.
specific reference to the number of persons involved. So,
Exactly, yeah.
get remote.
Those of you who knew Doug Gillis, who was in the club, he was a lawyer, and he was a lawyer for pilots, for people that, and he fought for pilots. And one of his cases, believe it or not, was an airplane that flew over a guy that was swimming, one guy, swimming out off the shore, and the guy flew down right over the top of him, and this guy turned the airplane in, and the FAA violated this guy. And Doug fought the thing, and I don't remember if he lost the case. I don't remember or not. I just know that it was one of those situations where it was his word against the other guy. And they, again, it was an assembly of people. What people? One person out in the ocean.
Then you can't even see them.
And he probably can't even, yeah, exactly. So just be aware, you know, be aware of what you're doing. So don't do anything that attracts attention. And the second one, if the FAA inspectors watch me right now, would I be able to successfully defend my actions as necessary for normal flight? This right here basically is know your airplane. It is vital for you to know that POH. Because if you're flying a Pitts, it does differently for takeoff than a J3 Cub, as I got up here. J3 Cub, you know, if he's climbing out, you know, 45-degree angle, that can be construed as being not normal flight for that airplane. But for a different airplane, it could be. So it's you know, the whole point here is that now you students, of course, you know, you are learning it, and you're learning this stuff right now. But for you old timers, it might have kind of forgot some of this stuff. You know, it might be an idea that maybe you might get back in the book. Obviously, if you get violated, you'll be doing a lot of studying of that book to defend yourself. So that's one of the things to do for to keep your nose clean. Don't get in trouble. Any questions so far? Any discussion? Okay. Everybody had a lot to say before the meeting started. Okay, you've probably seen a lot of airplanes doing this kind of stuff, and I've already heard 2 or 3 reports tonight about that. Nobody usually does much about it. You know, most people aren't the wiser. However, I've had people call the club up who I knew. They knew me, and they were thinking about, you know, they automatically, of course, blamed us because we got T-34s. It wasn't us, but apparently there was a T-34 buzzing the church out here, out in Moreno Valley. And I've had them call me. Fortunately, they didn't call the FAA. But that's because they knew I worked out at the Aero Club, so they called me. And it was Vic Hoy. So I called Fred, and I said, well, Fred, you know, I don't think he's been out there that Sunday morning. And sure enough, it wasn't Fred. It was a T-34 from someplace else. But people are constantly looking out for these things. I'm telling you, I've stood there listening, and just like Scott was saying, there are people, when they see an airplane over their head, you know, 9/11 brought it to attention. And of course, our wonderful news media makes it even more so. Every time a plane crashes, it just focuses right on it. So be aware of that. When you're flying, just be aware that there's somebody out there watching you. And Cody, do you have anything to say, add to that, or subtract, or?
No, I don't.
Okay. That's our wing safety guy, so. Okay. One of the things I wanted to bring up, and basically we're kind of done with that subject, is that one of the things that we got to watch out for too, and it's all in keeping with the same stuff we've been talking about being violated, is that most of the FAA administrators today are not pilots. They used to be. There used to be pilots. A lot of them were even air traffic controllers and people like that who knew about aviation. But today, most of them are appointees into those high positions, and most of them are not pilots. They're administrators.
Point that out to them if they ever confront you about something.
What's that?
It's good to point that out to an FAA administrator if they ever confront you about something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, Scott. One of the things, though, however, we just recently, FAA just appointed the deputy director of the FAA, and he is a private pilot. Okay, so we are making progress again. I doubt it's going to be a trend that direction. However, at least we got the second man in charge of the FAA right now, who is a private pilot. However, he did just get his private pilot. He got it in October in a Skyhawk. But, you know, at least he does know about general aviation, and he did have a background in general aviation before he got this job. So we do have a guy, Michael Whitaker is his name. So we do have somebody that kind of understands a little bit there. Okay, real quick. We're going to do this real quick. Quick knowledge test. What instruments and equipment are required in your airplane to make it airworthy? I listed them up there. I meant to hide them, but how many of these airplanes? A lot of these. There's a couple of them in there. Of course, we don't need in our airplanes, but except for the T-34s. T-34s need a manifold pressure, and of course, we got to have a fuel gauge. Yeah, gauge. That's pretty good. Landing gear indicator. A lot of this stuff is pretty much, you know, obviously we have it in the airplanes. But if you got one of those that's not working, are you supposed to fly with the airplane without any of these things?
Depends upon the MEO.
Yeah.
If you have your iPod with you, not iPad.
iPad? Yeah, but is that a bona fide instrument? Yeah. This, now again, you students or newer pilots, of course, you know, should know this by the back of their hand, but some of us old timers sometimes forget. So that compass. That's the oldest thing in any airplanes, of any instrumentation in that airplane, is the compass. And we still have to have it. We had to have it in the jet and the Air Force. We had to have that compass up there. And believe me, it did come in handy one time out of the 30 years I flew that airplane. And we had just got the glass cockpit. We were out at Hickam Air Force Base, just took off, and the FAA called us up and says, what's your heading? We gave our heading, and FAA says you're 90 degrees off. And so we turned everything off. We just shut down the whole cockpit, turned everything back on again. And FAA's, again, we gave headings. FAA says you're not, now you're like, I think it was, I don't remember, it was like 180 degrees off or something like that. We were totally screwed up, and so we ended up doing a gyro, where they tell us what heading to go to, and we had to use the magnetic compass to do that, to make sure. Now, obviously, we still use the instruments, but the magnetic compass was our, at that point, actually became the primary instrument. And we went all the way back with them talking us down to the runway and landing at Hickam. It was the middle of the night, too, so it's always at night when that kind of stuff happens. So anyhow, magnetic compass, yes, very, very important. Any questions on this? Any additions? Anybody want to take away any of this stuff? Okay. Doc, you doing okay? Okay. All right. All right. Let's see if there was anything else. I don't want to forget something. Okay. Okay, some of you got emails and phone calls on ID cards and outdated IT cards, and also there's a lot of coming not to sue that are not been signed. Nothing happens as long as you don't fly, but if you fly, then that's when everything has to be up to date. And we haven't been hit yet by Eric Trayman, who's the head of all Aero clubs. He will be hitting us probably this year, if they have the money to do it with. And he looks really hard at that stuff. So we need to make sure that if you do fly, we need to make sure that you have everything, including your ID cards that got you into the club, are up to date too. A lot of them are out of date. A lot of them are. So I just need to bring that up, and I'm going to try to see if I can't talk to individuals for some, because there's a lot of rejects on the dues this time, more than I've seen in many years. So I'm not sure if it's because everybody's running out of money, or it's the wrong time of year, or what. Okay, any questions? All right. All right, Bob's going to get up and talk. It's his turn.
One of the things that Roger just mentioned in regards to aerobatics, sitting as chairman of a board at Redlands Airport, had an individual come in when the 747, that's the picture we have down at the Aero Club, and they were doing the 1 million pound test on that aircraft over at San Bernardino. This individual brought in pictures to the committee at the time complaining about low flight. And it looked like the aircraft in essence was about 500 feet above his house, when the true altitude is about 3,000 feet, considering the elevation in Redlands, where I am, if you live up on top of the hill, somewhere around 1,800 feet. But a lot has to do with what the camera's going to do, and you can't depict that, but this is a type of thing that takes place, and then they forward that to the FAA, and there's a total different perspective in regards to what you're doing, and they think you're flat-headed. So just really be aware. I'm going to bring up issues for maintenance. Everybody's been really curious about our maintenance in the aircraft and what's taking place. There's been recommendations that we have volunteers come in and work on the aircraft. According to FAA regulations, part 43, it states that a maintenance mechanic, an aircraft owner, or an operator are allowed to work on the aircraft. Now, volunteers can work on it if they're supervised. The problem we have in the Aero Club is that David G. does not have time to sit there and supervise a helper to work on the aircraft because of the regulations. He has to be there consistently. Therefore, his work is being denied in completion of that particular work. So, even though that we look for volunteers to help within the Aero Club, there are certain things that we can do and what we can't do as members. Am I correct, David?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Thank you.
I think there may be, misconstrued as volunteers in other areas to cut back budgetary issues to put more money into the maintenance program, not necessarily bring in volunteer mechanics.
Well, what you're looking in is removal of an employee that's required under Air Force regulations.
It wasn't just for volunteer mechanics.
Pardon, sir?
It wasn't just for volunteer mechanics. We sort of looked for different ideas.
Okay. So, anyway, that's one of the issues that we want to look at. Let me just cover some of the items here. Triple nickel. We're waiting for the FAA for their ferry permit. I've made 3 or 4 phone calls in the last 3 days, and I'm not getting any response back from their maintenance inspector. It's been sitting at the FAA at FSDO in Riverside for about 9 days now for that permit. The aircraft is ready to bring back. As soon as we get the permit, we'll bring it back, and then it has to go into annual to complete the annual that was started years ago on that particular thing. So everything is up to snuff on that, including the PDOT static check. That's been completed. 29 Foxtrot, I'm going to need a couple pilots. One to ferry the aircraft down to French Valley, to install the altimeter and decoder, and get a PDOT static on 29 Foxtrot. As I mentioned before, the system in that old aircraft is all in one. What we're doing, we're splitting the system to have not only an altimeter and a decoder to reduce the cost, because to buy that one unit, which is not made, it's about $2,000 for an overhauled unit. So that's what we're going to do as soon as we can get it down and get the appointment set up for 29 Foxtrot. The 182, the DME, is going back in the shop. David G. found that the switch is in air, and that has to be replaced, so we've got a work order on that one. 5.6, the PR is in process for the PR purchase request, and that's going to be a top overhaul for 6 cylinders. And we'll start removing those cylinders, and then we just have to wait for contracting to complete that particular order in regards to 5.6. 5.3, again, has got an engine overhaul. That engine is sitting in it. We do have an engine that's in the hangar, but the oil pressure unit is not putting out the pressure it has, so that has to come out. And there's a couple things that David G. has come up with to repair that oil system. We're going to take and try and get the oil pressure up and then get it tested prior to going into the aircraft. If we put it in the aircraft, we're paying for maintenance in. If it doesn't work, we have to pull it back out with additional costs, and we can't afford those things. So we'll do a test stand on that engine once the oil pressure has been, we think has been corrected on that. 5.7. 5.7 has been an interesting program. It's been quite lengthy, a lot due to contracting, and then we end up with the electrical fire after it was installed. There was some delay because a lot of the service lines that were removed when the engine came out weren't marked properly. It took a while to get them back into tracing that system and getting it back in. The problem we have now, it's down to 2 items. One is a prop governor, and the other is blade angle. Blade angle, again, is very, very critical. So the prop governor is off, and it's going to be sent into the shop for a bench check. It'll be sent to Van Nuys for that. We'll take care of that, the club. And then if the prop governor is doing the right pressure, which is going from 50 psi to 500 psi to control the dome in regards to that aircraft, then it's in the blade angle for the propeller itself. The propeller itself was overhauled. So that means the propeller is going to have to go back into a shop, and we'll have to check the blade angle. Those are the only 2 things that are keeping that airplane from flying at the particular time. There's been a lot of research in regards to this issue, and nobody has a real definite answer. The aircraft is running very smoothly when it is at low power, but on takeoff, we're only getting 2,300 versus the 2,625 on the RPM. So those are the issues we have with the maintenance, and it's been a real drudgery thing for the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's just time consuming. You can only do so much, and we've only got so much money. So we try and do certain things in regards to make sure that the aircraft are safe to fly and maintain its maintenance to comply with the regulations, and that's what we are today.
A lot of that was unique on that aircraft there, being so unique with the different motor in there. The plans on getting all the linkages in, adjusted out properly also.
Yeah. I've gone back to the FAA at Washington with some dry numbers, trying to get some more information in regards to that aircraft, because that aircraft was modified by the Forestry Service. That engine is not, it's compatible with the aircraft, but it took special drawings for the engine box and mountings and etc. In regards to the electrical system, there are no plans for the electrical system because it's been changed. So the carbon pile regulator that in most of the T-34s, which regulate the power from the generators to the battery and the bus system, has been removed with a regular, it's a VR300 voltage regulator. And that took a lot of research and what have you, since it didn't catch on fire, but all of the points were fused together, and it just was not putting out voltage. And David G. and a number of individuals who came out to the aircraft and tried to do some research for us and help us out. Finally got to the point where instead of getting 3 volts out of the alternator, we're getting 24 volts out of the alternator system now. But it's kind of like, it's just one of those airplanes that doesn't follow the rules and the plans that are involved. And this all takes time when you have to sit there and trace it, especially when you have bundles of wires.
Burnt bundles of wires.
Pardon?
Burnt bundles of wires.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever contact David Work up at the old site?
No, I did not.
Guys, Forestry used
you can do
Forestry used dozens of these airplanes. He's done a lot of the AD work on this stuff.
Well, we also had Parks too, and I did contact Parks. Parks knows what's going on. They've been the guru of the T-34s longer than most individuals. Just covering some of my notes here. There's been a recommendation for an advisory board. I use the word advisory board or an advisory council, and where individuals can get together, come up with ideas to come up and try and improve the Aero Club or make recommendations in regards of how we operate. And so I just want to throw that out to some of the individuals. I don't want to take all your time this evening, but does it sound agreeable with some individuals? People want to take and think it's going to work or not work, or I'm looking at various ideas that have been recommended in regards to the Aero Club itself.
Don't we have a regular board as it is? Safety officer,
We have a
myself,
standards
ops
board.
officer.
We have a standards board that discusses a lot of this, and under the regulation, we have advisors that are supposed to give us additional help under the Air Force regulations. So we have operations, maintenance, and safety advisors that advise and give assistance to the Aero Club in regards to the regulations to help us operate better. So we're covering ourselves in a lot of respects by the regulation. Any other comments in regards to that?
Absolutely, I think it'd be a great idea. Most of the other, there's a lot of other functions on the base that have them.
If I may interject,
Yeah.
because I got a history of this Aero Club. The advisors that you have elected here, ops, safety, those are the people that any member can go to. And they decide, well, what is operational, what is good, what is bad. And it's not management, it is a club member that's in that. Then those people get together and they advise the manager of these things. Another committee is just totally useless. I mean, you've already got the system in
them. I was
place.
told those committees
But
don't
people are not
exist.
using the
Just a
system.
second. What was the finish?
I said, I said, the people are not using the system as a design. And the system is working all over the Air Force. No, all the other Aero Clubs don't have advisory things and so on. You utilize the system the Air Force designs.
Edwards doesn't have one.
With
Dayton
our
does not
stand
have
board
one.
meeting, isn't that about the same thing also?
The what now?
A stand board meeting with all those people.
Well, stand board is what, yeah, in a lot of cases, we cover some of that in the stand board meetings, which is run by the chief pilot. And that covers all of the instructors in regards to what we do, how we operate, and the release officers, the clearing officials, and the issues that they've had. And that's where most of the resolution comes from.
But most of those, that particular stand board is to whereby that, to make sure that the clearing officials and all the people are operating under the standard Air Force and Aero Club rules. What he's asking about is someone can go to and say, I got this idea and I'd like to have you look at it. And that's what the ops advisor is for, the safety and so on. Those people have their own meetings at any time and they advise you, the manager, to make their. And that's how the system works. Stand board is totally the operation of the Aero Club. It's under the established rules that you've written and the Air Force has written.
Yeah. Okay, we'll continue with that.
You have a suggestion, Bob?
Just a second. Richard?
If we're not allowed to use volunteers to help David out, why can't we go out and get some extra A&P help to get through this problem that we've got right now? We're dying because we don't have airplanes to fly. And if we can get airplanes fixed, we can generate revenue. But right now, we don't have airplanes, we can't generate revenue, and we're killing ourselves.
It took over 5 months to get a contract for 5 cents.
Well, we got to do something because, goddamn it, we're not doing anything right now.
I can't do any control, I have no control in regards to contracting. That sits there and it's took five months to get it
Somebody's
sit there.
got a direct contracting to go out and do something, and that's what your job is, and we got to get some help because we're dying.
I understand it. So let me address it with the higher ups and see what we can do in regards to that. I can't.
Either that or get David G some extra hours.
David G don't want to work those extra hours. David G's retired.
Well, that's not what he said. They said, you know, I mean, let's have a couple barbecues and raise some money. I'll donate some money to get another mechanic out to help. You can't do it all yourself, Dave. We've known
We've
that.
got good people in hanging. You don't do so much at a time, too.
I
We're
agree.
only held by money is one, parts is the other one. You only get stuff so fast. We don't hold the purse strings.
Airplane's down for 2 years, ridiculous.
Well, yeah, but we don't have the money. Who's got the
And
money?
that was not,
That's
and
what I'm saying.
that was not,
Different ideas.
We have 4 of 5 airplanes grounded for the last 6 months. What's wrong with this picture?
you buy the engine and I'll put it in.
There you go.
Well,
We've got 37,000 and it's still on the ground.
You guys forgot there's a bureaucracy here.
Yeah, we've got to follow it, we've got to follow the chain of command.
You know.
well, the chain of command has got to support us.
Well, you had to follow the chain of command when you were flying airplanes for the Air Force, right?
And I know
And I
how
have
to
to fly
make the
the
chain
thing.
of command take care of me. And right now, our procurement and our NAF is not taking care of us.
There are,
If you seen how the system works long enough to really know for sure that, or is that just hearsay? Until you're actually doing it, you know, it's easy to be a second string quarterback, you know, but until you see how the system works, it's kind of hard in some ways. I'm not sure, you know. If you see
I
how
have,
this
this
stuff
is
works.
my process. For me to take and do the top overall, say on 5.6 for 6 cylinders, I have to go to the console. So that goes before my immediate supervisor. She reviews it, and then it goes before the console. If the base commander is not available for 2 or 3 months, I can't do anything until the console approves that. So let's make the assumption that I get it approved, and it takes me 3 months from the time I put in my purchase request for that money. It goes before the council, I make my presentation, the council votes on that. So they say, okay, we approve you to spend $8,000. The next process now is, with the purchase request, then it goes through the finance director into contracting. I have to take and submit to contracting then whether it is a contractor that is in the system that we do not want to use because that particular contractor has caused us nothing but issues with aircraft engines. We've had nothing but leakage and issues. In fact, the failure of those engines, the failure of the 2 cylinders in 5.6 was created by this one because he never took and chromed the cylinders and rebored them to the specs. One cylinder I got from him on an overhaul was 22 to 27 thousandths choke. Continental says 4,000 to 6,000. This is what I'm fighting. So now I'm already at 6 months, we'll say, in regards to that. Now I take the cylinders off, I send them in, I get them back, and then it becomes back in there. So it almost takes a year for me to get something accomplished and get the airplane flying.
Bob, one quick, just a comment. You know, this isn't like a self-help club. These are Air Force assets, every airplane out there. We just can't go and say, hey, you know, we need this fixed, that fixed, without going through some process. Even if we had 1,000 barbecues and got all kinds of money, you think they're gonna accept the money to fix an Air Force asset?
I think what you're missing is the fact that there's a bunch of us that are willing to help, that Dave can only do so much.
I know, I'm out there with you
The
every
other
day.
thing is,
Okay, I understand that.
if you get another
And it's
AMP
not a personal, let me finish.
Okay,
You,
go ahead.
you and I spoke about this, and it's not a personal shot at you.
No, I realize that.
But the frustration, as you see,
Sure is.
we got two guys working in the office, say we can't do anything. If you got two Cessnas flying that you could go rent at Hemet or Riverside.
There's no
Okay.
Cessna's online, the other one's TBO on the engine, mid motor on the other one.
So,
You know,
all
the
I'm
thing
saying is,
to
if
send
you got
these
guys that
airplanes-
they're trying to
Let me
help.
explain something. If you wanna get another AMP and send the airplane out to an AMP and have the inspections done, they're gonna go out there and make it airworthy and that's it. There's no fixed phases, there's no cleaning up the airplanes to keep them halfway.
That'll be $4,000.
They have to keep them halfway together. We have spare parts that hang, and we do all that stuff, try to, time, you know.
Let me
time
just
to-
say that we can come up with a number of ideas why these airplanes are flying. But when we
With
come
the
up
active duty, they say.
you're a little resistant to, all we're trying to do is say, let's be a little more positive and see what we come up with, rather than to be.
Positive, this whole base has worked for us. We need hydraulic problems. Workload permitting, these shops on this base, they take care of our hydraulics. Sheet metal shop comes down here and busts their ass doing sheet metal for us, workload permitting. Doesn't cost us any money. And we're saving big bucks for this club that way. We can't afford to send planes out to have sheet metal work done when we have a city right here that does it for us.
No, that's not what anybody's saying.
You know,
Gentlemen, excuse me, this naval officer's gotta go.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing here is some bickering. Some of you gentlemen don't understand there's a process. You guys are flame spraying Bob. I was in this club way back when the last aircraft manager popped smoke. And actually, it was probably a good thing that, it was Lisa, I think was her name, or whatever her
Lisa
name
was
was.
before me.
It was a good thing that she left. Don't kill the messenger. There's a process. Listen to what he's trying to explain the process to you. You don't understand it, that's because your ears are closed. I got to go. It's my
Justin?
Now, Jim, I understand this situation is frustrating. I work in a technician's shop, and I have to deal with customers all the time, wondering why their trucks aren't fixed and what's going on. What you guys have to do is trust that Dave G and Bob and Roger are doing everything within their power to get our airplanes fixed, because I can guarantee you that is the case. It's frustrating, it sucks, I like to fly too, but we gotta trust our people. These guys are veterans, they've done it for dozens and dozens of years, and they're trying to invest. What they need is our support in a positive way. Now, I'm not saying you guys aren't trying to do that, but we've gotta listen to kind of the process that goes on. That's all I'm saying.
and you know, they could probably use our money. I can't help but notice that every time I fly 29 Foxtrot, it's been a week since anybody flew it, and it's my name on the line just above.
Ditto,
So,
1-5.
if y'all wanna come out and fly some little planes with us, we could give the club some dollars. That's all I'm
That's where it
saying.
is.
There you go.
It's flying the airplanes that gives us money.
And the other problem too is a lot of times you get one airplane up, it's like that 182. That guy, that thing goes through 100 hours, 3 of them a year. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
because that airplane flies a lot. And the more that airplane flies, it's gotta come into the shop and it's down for a week and a half. And it'd be down farther, probably quicker if you went somewhere else. But I know a lot more money, that's for sure.
More money, just half the stuff won't get fixed, you know, some of the other, no, write-ups, they're gonna fix safety flight write-ups, and that's it. We have to have time to take care of the other write-ups, we have been slowly but surely.
Yeah, remember, these airplanes are what year?
55.
Yep.
You're paying
Some
two-
of us aren't even that old.
And
You're
they're
getting
getting
tired.
to spend for $2,000 because the AOA is bad, you know, the angle of attack or, the gyro's bad, and that's big bucks. So you get off of them, it's hard for Bob to get down and try to browbeat them and say, hey, I need $2,000 because we, you know, the student's gotta fly a test flight next Tuesday with the FAA and it's not certified now.
He's already made enemies there, and we don't need many.
As an example, the instruments in the T-34, the vacuum pump pulls air from the external system outside through the instrument and then exhausts it into the engine compartment. there's no way we can attach a filter onto that instrument. It's $600 to $700 every 3 years to repair the instruments in the T-34. And when you start looking at this as a cycle, you say, well, how do we try and keep it, and how do we make it remedied in regards to making money? We're just at a break-even point in a lot of cases, and the more we fly, we begin to get above that break-even point, and that's what keeps the Air Club going, because now we got money to spend. But right now, with nothing flying, and I understand the frustration, because normally we're flying 4 T-34s for rental in regards to a parade. I've got 4 aircraft scheduled now for the 4th of July. Whether it's going to get 4 or whether I'm going to have 3, I don't know. And that's a full day of flying. That's money to the club, and that's what I'm looking at and trying to do right now. The main key is to get the aircraft that are available with engines, etc., to get them flying. The first one is going to be 5.7. 5.7 is the first process of what we're doing is the governor. The second process will be the prop, excuse me. So we've done this now for the last 3 weeks, testing and trying to make adjustments. And we haven't found the answer. Nobody can answer the question except for an old German out in Van Nuys, and that's where the prop governor is going to go. And he's been doing it for 30 years, so he's been giving me good information. Anyway, that's kind of a rundown.
Excuse me, Bob, can
Major?
I interject? Welcome this evening. My name is Major Torres, and I'm the Force Support Squadron Commander, so I'm part of Bob's support system and chain of command. And I want to let you know that we're very, very happy of your membership, and we are listening to all of your concerns, and we're trying to gather them and make smart decisions and make sure that, I think there was a suggestion box, that was one thing that popped in my head. So I highly encourage the continued involvement. I mean, I think it's a necessity in what we're doing. It's all about us teaming together and making sure what we can do to make this a better operation. I could see a lot of concern for sure, and there is a process in place. I'm certainly part of that in watching this go through, and the timelines involved can sometimes be a lot longer than any one customer would like to wait for. So a little bit of positive encouragement and teamwork on this is great, and I love this. It seems like there is some suggestions on maybe the smaller planes and so forth. So the one thing that I just wanted to relay to you all is, first off, thank you very much for your involvement here, and secondly, that we are taking an active look to make sure that internally that these individuals that you're seeing face to face have their support mechanisms from the top down as well. Because if there's something that I can do to get additional manpower to work with possible other members that I can maybe help facilitate, then we're definitely going to be taking a hard look and seeing if we can make some more magic happen for everybody involved. So again, thank you very much for what you're doing. I will not come up here and tell you that I'm a skilled aviator and I've spent a lot of time behind in the air. However, I do have a little love for it, and obviously being in the Air Force for quite some time, definitely enjoy being around it. So I will tell you that these individuals, they put a lot of time and effort and concern as well. They're definitely voicing your concerns, and they're trying to do the best they can as well. So continue the support, and if you can give us a little bit of your patience and constructive criticism, we'll definitely take it, and we're going to run with this the best we can. So I thank you again for your moment. I'll be standing by. We're working to make sure that we're working closely with safety and operations and maintenance, again, to make sure that we're looking at all angles to make this the best club that we can. So thank you for your membership.
Thank you.
We're back over to you, Bob.